Namaste and welcome. You're tuned into Indica Buzz, a brand new platform where we explore the depth and diversity of the vibrant world of Indian knowledge systems, traditions, and culture. Through this series, you will get to know more about Indica, the people, the projects, and the ideas that are shaping contemporary engagement with India's knowledge traditions. I am Dimple, and through these conversations, we will explore meaningful initiatives that bring fresh perspectives on Indic thoughts and practice. But first, what is INDICA? INDICA is a globally connected yet deeply rooted organization dedicated to the study, practice, and transmission of Indian knowledge systems, or IKS. It is a space for seekers, scholars, and practitioners who wish to engage with India's vast and living traditions in a meaningful way. Our work spans education, research, arts, publishing, and more, with the aim of enabling individuals to realize their potential, passion, and purpose, not as an abstract idea, but as a lived experience grounded in both study and practice. Now, Indica Buzz is an extension of this vision. It's a space which brings you closer to the thought currents and creative endeavors emerging from the Indica ecosystem. With each edition, we will feature conversations, projects, and voices that contribute to this larger engagement with Indian knowledge systems. In today's edition, we turn the spotlight on Padma Bharatis, a unique anthology commissioned by Indica and published in collaboration with Blue One Inc. This collection brings together insights of 11 distinguished contributors. We begin with a conversation with Sri Jay Jina, the curator of this fantastic anthology, exploring the inspirations and aspirations behind this project. Then one by one, we will speak to each of the contributors and try and examine what they feel would be the reader takeaway of their input to this anthology. Namaste and welcome, Jay Bhai, Kem Cho.
Namaskar, and it's so good to see you again. Thank you for inviting me
Likewise.
to talk about Padma Bharatis.
Padma Bharatis, the title itself is quite intriguing and fascinating for a book. So do tell us what this book is all about.
Well, you know, the award systems in India mirror many others in many other countries. And Padma Bharatis is really a book which was inspired by the fact that of late, it's been very gratifying to see ordinary folks who have done some amazingly extraordinary things being recognized as national heroes. And so this anthology really is about celebrating just some of those people in terms of what they have achieved, and kind of use their stories to share with the public as to how individuals who are inspired to do some amazing things for the public good within their own communities can really make a difference. So that's what the book is essentially about.
I see. You mentioned all these awards that are given from time to time through various organizations, including the state. So there have been many media reports and even books on some well-known Padma awardees. What motivated the creation or curation of this anthology in the first place?
That's a very good question. When one typically sees news about somebody, whether they are well known or especially when they're not so well known, news of their being awarded with a Padma, that kind of news usually makes a small couple of paragraphs on page 7 of a local language newspaper in the region from which the individual came. And perhaps that's followed up.
Correct.
If the Padma awardee is reasonably better known with something in the English media, or perhaps something which might appear on an online platform. But usually that news then just kind of dissipates, and the achievements and the life of the individuals concerned and how they have impacted on the communities in which they have operated kind of becomes yesterday's news. What we wanted to do in this book was to pick out, not in any specific design sense, but in a random sense, those individuals that were so effective in what they managed to achieve, and who had enthused and motivated those that have contributed to the stories to actually go out into the field, talk to those individuals where possible, not just write, if you like, second or third hand reports about what one of these Padma awardees did. So it was really about capturing the life stories of the individuals concerned, their trials, their tribulations, their triumphs, and really those stories which go beyond just a news report and go into the essence of the individual and the communities in which they have actually contributed with their actions.
So I did read the book, haven't completed it, I must confess. And totally my bad, because I've been really, really occupied by an upcoming INDICA conference on colonial encounters and influence on IK studies. So, yeah, I wanted to inform our readers, or rather our viewers about it. Back to the book, I saw a mention, a dedication to Sri D.V. Sridharan, and I also read, you talked about, or rather you wrote about how he inspired it. So for the wider audience, I would want you to talk about that a bit, if you would like to.
I think with DV, those of us in Indica who have had the honor to know him will know just what an amazing man he is. Those that have not heard of him will hopefully get introduced to him, not only through his book, but in fact the book that inspired this particular Padma Bharatis book. He, DVG, is a retired seaman, and one of the things that he did about 20 years ago, 15 years ago, was he ran a blog called Good News India, where he actually went out to look for such good news stories, which would appear on page 7 in a couple of paragraphs in a vernacular. And he elaborated on those. And through that, he had quite a large following of people who read his stories, provided him with feedback and comment. And so within Indica, that particular episode in DV's life was very much an inspiration. And it was through that the idea of Padma Bharatis was born. And it was quite a simple conversation between myself and Sri Hariji, who is the founder of Indica, about 18 months ago on a phone call. And he said, yeah, let's do this. And we followed that up with my conversation with DVG, who kindly volunteered his support and his mentorship. And those of you that have read anything that DV has written will appreciate just how wonderful his prose is and how well he captures the human spirit, the environment, and writes stories which are true to the mark, but yet uplifting. They're feel-good stories, not just in an artificial way, but in a real, humane way. And so we had the honor of having DVG to come along and support us with the project, and I found him to be an immensely invaluable mentor, because my background isn't of creative writing by any stretch of the imagination. So to have somebody of his caliber to support me and to provide guidance, not just to myself, but to others in Indica, and particularly the authors who came forward to contribute to this book, was just absolutely immeasurable. We cannot thank him enough for the contribution he's made.
I wholeheartedly agree. And we wish him long life, and we look forward to more books from him for sure in the near future, divine willing. Back to Padma Bharatis. JD, this might look like or sound like a very typical question, but I have to ask, what makes Padma Bharatis different from other books?
Well, as I've said already, that this book is a collection of stories that go beyond what one sees in a news article. But beyond that, what makes this book different is that unlike other anthologies of famous Padma Shris, or even less famous Padma Shris. What this book is about is really a random collection. So that's one of the primary redeeming features of it. Each of the subjects, and there's more than 11 subjects, 11 authors, yes, but one of the stories has got a couple as their subjects. Another story has got three people going through three generations who are Padma awardees. So, whilst there are 11 stories, there are more than 11 subjects. What makes these subjects unique is that they were selected effectively randomly, and they were selected by the contributors who came forward, who volunteered with their talent and with their time to write these stories and take the trouble to actually do some solid research, including, might I say, actually paying visits to most of the subjects which appear in these stories. So that's what makes this book unique. Another thing which makes this book unique is that when we set off on this project, we explicitly within Indica deemed that the story should be about subjects who were not known, subjects who were not in the public gaze. So they were not sportsmen or in the media or in politics or any of the sort of high profile activities that many such awardees tend to come from, regardless of whether they're in India or elsewhere. Yeah. A third factor was that we wanted to make sure that the stories were stories which were not covered in other forms. So, for example, if there was a book dedicated to a Padma awardee's life, then by definition, we would not want to repeat a smaller version of that story in our book. So those were the kind of specific drivers that motivated the selections of the stories. And we did not actually direct any of our authors to say, look at this individual, not this individual. So every author who came forward with their proposals uh, chose the individual awardee that motivated them to want to write about their subject. And that kind of gave us a random but perhaps an even playing field. And if one looks at this small sample of a dozen stories, 11 authors with maybe 15 subjects, they actually defy all kinds of categorization. One could not classify them by region or by gender or by area of endeavor or by age or anything like that. There's a good mix. They're random, and in fact, that is one of the things that makes these stories so redeeming and so unique. And I would actually say that these stories, whilst they are written largely by Indians, I say largely because there's a couple of non-Indians but of Indian origin who have contributed to these stories. And whilst all of the stories are of Indian subjects, actually the stories go beyond the Indian context. They are human stories. They're inspiring stories that can illustrate the best of what humankind is capable of, regardless of place or time. And I think that
Wow.
even even people in Japan or Jamaica would be fascinated by these stories. So I would like to think that, picking up one of these stories uh, by any young person or youngish person should actually create a degree of curiosity and awe about what the ordinary human being is capable of achieving.
How wonderful. Uh, you talked about authors coming with proposal and all. I have had the good fortune, thanks to Ma Saraswati, of serving few authors and bringing them forth or try, working on their book projects. And it's largely been one author most of the time. And or it has been three projects with individual authors, but never have I ever worked on a project which involved multiple authors. And for you, it's going beyond 10. So it's like a mammoth project, to think of it. So what was the process like? How did the author selection happen? What was the entire hand holding process like? I mean, for you as a curator, I'm very curious to know about that entire process per se, if you could share.
This was a voyage of discovery for me, um, because my background, as I said, is not creative writing, uh, quite far from it actually.
Yes.
I've always been fascinated by writing, and I do write, and I've been fascinated by reading, and I read a lot, and I have been since the age of dot. Um, for this project, when and I spoke about it, we basically left it as, okay, let's make an announcement. So we put out an announcement to Indica saying, here's a project where we to celebrate the these unknown people who have been recognized by um, the Indian government as people worthy of a Padma Award because of the amazing work that they've done in education or health or in social activities or in the environment or all of those kind of disciplines. Um, and we're inviting people to uh, to make an application to say we'd love to write. I would love to write a story, and this is the subject I would love to write the story about, and this is why I would like to write the story about this person, and this is my experience. And we did not dissuade anyone, regardless of whether they had ever written any story or had published anything. So we actually specifically encourage people who are first time writers to come forward and contribute. And we had about 20 or so applications. Some of them weren't able to commit to delivering a story in the time frames that we wanted to get the book published. So those fell by the wayside. But regardless of that, we ended up with a dozen stories. And those stories then kind of evolved from ideas, nascent ideas in the individual writers' minds to what you see in the book. And that took quite a bit of a process. Some of our writers are very experienced writers. Uh, there's a couple there who are published authors. Um, there are one or two who are regular columnists, but for whom such creative writing is a new experience. We have also in the collection two teenagers, 14-year-olds when they wrote the stories, both of them of Indian descent, living in the United States. So we have a cross section of people.
Wow.
Well, we have an accomplished and a popular children's author amongst our selection of writers. Um,
Wow.
so there's an eclectic selection of individuals who were motivated to come forward and contribute. And in terms of getting them towards the same goal, I got a tremendous amount of help from people in Indica, people like Nagarajji, definitely DVG, and obviously the mentorship and ongoing positive um, positive prodding by Hariji to make sure that things were going forward to time and to plan. And I, in the process, had to learn quite a lot about creative writing, and also about making making my interactions with individual authors productive. So I was able to use what I'd learned from my exposure to people within Indica, accomplished writers and authors within Indica, to actually collaborate. And along the process of getting the result, I learned a lot from each of the authors, and I hope they learned something from me. And my aspiration was to make each of these stories ring out with the person, whether they were, entering Rashtrapati Bhavan at the moment before the award was granted, or as they were contemplating in a garden whilst talking to the author about their stories. So I wanted to make sure that those kind of nuances were captured. And it was lovely that the authors kind of fell into the synchronicity of it. And, we're fortunate that we've got a dozen stories here, which in their own way will be self-standing, but as a collection will, as I say, inspire people to see others around them in a positive light, because the human brain, the human mind is capable of so much, and these stories and the subjects of their stories actually project that wonderfully.
Indeed. Uh, from what you narrated, and obviously your emotional investment also shines through while you speak about the project. It seems as if it was a baby, and I'm sure it must have been like a baby for you. Uh, it seems that it was a very transformative experience for you. And considering that you have not written a profile, but you are the curator, tell us something about your entire experience as a curator and what all went into it.
Um, I suppose, beyond what I just described earlier, um, being a curator is like, it actually ended up being a bit like being um, I suppose, a midwife. Looking
Indeed,
at
very well.
yeah, looking at ideas which kind of had to gestate into something which became a real thing, a real living thing, and the fascinating part of that was just the different stages at which each of the individual stories were at, and how those stories then could be brought to fruition. And I must confess that there were times when I was talking to people who were far more experienced at this kind of thing as writers than I was. So I ended up learning so much from them and then transferring that to others. The fascinating part was that that dynamic, that mixture of dynamic. Um, I was also lucky enough to meet a number of the authors face to face, a number of the contributors, that is, face to face, in other interactions during the 18 months or so that it took for this work to come to life. And during those interactions, I learned so much about them and from them that it became just a wonderful roller coaster ride. And I think I feel richer for it. I feel more capable now of writing something like this. And I hope that this book isn't just a one off. I hope that these stories actually inspire a subsequent volume of similar stories.
God willing. Uh, I am aware of the fact that Padma Bharati is not your first project with Indica and that you are an integral part of the Indica family. And while you say that you are not an author, I wonder how is it that your association goes to a book in some form or the other? That's my first question. And second, from what I know a little of your background, it's a little unusual for one to find someone of your professional background to be in this particular arena and contributing so brilliantly. So I want to know about what is your background first, and second, what all have you been doing for Indica so far?
Right. Okay. So um, I'm a third generation displaced person of Indian origin. So my grandparents migrated nearly a century ago to East Africa, and which is where I was born. And I've spent the majority of my life living in Europe, in the UK. So I'm quite distant from India in that way. But I was fortunate enough to be brought up in an Indic environment, and some of it rubbed off on me. So that's where I am. Um, as far as my professional background is concerned, I didn't do creative writing, as I said, and I keep saying again and again. Um, I'm basically lazy, so I studied mathematics and physics, which came easy to me, or relatively easy compared to other things. And I've spent the best part of my career working in industry and also interspersed with working in academia. and I've only just recently retired from being a tutor in a university. So I have officially stopped teaching mathematics to undergraduate students. So that's my background. In terms of my role in Indica, some while back, some 5-6 years back, I don't know how, but through perhaps some contributions I've made to some Indica publications, I got the opportunity to meet Hari Kiranji, and he invited me to join the Indica community. And for the past 4 or 5 years, I've been taking care of the Chitrayana vertical within Indica. I'm director of Chitrayana, and Chitrayana is essentially a mission, has the mission of producing books, particularly books which convey in word and in visual form the diversity and rich history and tradition of Indian civilization. And within that forum, this book, the Padma Bharatis book, is the 4th one to be published. The three previous ones were all coffee table books. One was a book called Discovering Devi, which is co-authored by the subject of the book herself. She is Rukmaniji, who is a very, very accomplished and a very graceful Bharatanatyam dancer. And that's a book of beauty, professionally photographed by her colleague, which stands out. And then a second book written by Gurpreet and Bharat is a book on the Pallavas and the Chalukyas, which is a fascinating juxtaposition of the rivalries and the synergies between two kingdoms, which kind of coexisted and overlapped over centuries in the southern part of India. The third book was Anveshna. And Anveshna was one where I contributed as co-author and as editor. And I edited that alongside our colleague Danji, who is responsible for Indica Pictures. So that's another vertical within Indica. And that book actually stemmed from another project quite similar to Padma Bharatis, where Indica announced an award of grants to aspiring talented photographers to capture images of Indian culture, Indian settings across the length and breadth of the country. And that book came out of 8 portfolios, which were produced by 8 of the grantees who produced their picture catalogs from their travels in specifically different parts of the country. And those stories span everything from the far east of India, Majuli in Assam, to the deserts of Rajasthan, to the icy deserts of Ladakh, and also to the verdant valleys of Tamil Nadu. So the whole geography of the country was randomly captured in these 8 portfolios of pictures. And Danji and a team of really talented photographic specialists helped us to not only identify those 8 awardees, but then to create a selection of those pictures which went into the book. And then I co-wrote the book with Harishi, which was published about 2 years back. And that's another very colorful picture book. And we hope, in the same vein, to continue producing more such books. And we've got a couple in the pipeline, both of them to do with specific geographies and specific eras of wonderful temple architecture in 2 specific parts of India. We'll tell you more about those once those things are solidified over the next few months. And then more projects.
Perhaps in subsequent editions of Indica Buzz. We will be happy to host you again in the subsequent editions of Indica Buzz. Thank you so much for sharing your personal and a bit of your professional journey, Jay Bhai, because it's highly inspirational. from the fact that you are of Indian origin, but so rooted or connected to Ma Bharati, that is inspirational. That somebody who spent a long, productive, amazing career in STEM is now doing what they are doing. It's inspirational. So, I mean, it's such a privilege to be having this conversation with you. Really grateful. Back to Padma Bharatis, I just wanted to ask you as to what do you think is the audience for this book, and what are the reactions that Padma Bharatis has received so far?
Well, I just, apart from thanking my family and my teachers, I have to thank Ma Saraswati um, for her blessings, and I have a little murti of her there. Um, as to your question about Padma Bharatis, I hope that the stories particularly inspire young people, and especially in India. In my travels across India, I see so many bright young people who are really focused on, getting their education and finding themselves a job and being, if you like, well settled. But I think that there are other aspects of life which also are important. Um, like I tell my own kids, you need both roots and wings. So we should not focus on one to the detriment of the other. With roots, we can be confident about our wings. Sometimes the wings without the roots can not be very productive long term. So I hope that young people, particularly, pick up this book. And, who knows? Some schools might be inspired to actually encourage 15-year-olds to pick up this book and read the stories and be inspired. Be inspired to find people like the ones that are documented in this book, or indeed be inspired to become like these people in the book. Because none of these people, or hardly any of these people, went to posh universities and got themselves what we call an education these days. There is education, and then there's education. And some of these stories show dimensions of education that we sometimes forget.
Very, very, very thoughtful remarks, actually. Uh, so many books already done. Padma Bharati also has been there, received well by the readers. What's next on the anvil?
Yeah, as I said, we've got a couple of coffee table books. Yeah,
Okay.
one of these books is being authored by a contributor to Padma Bharatis,
Oh,
and another one, yeah, um, he might wish to tell you about it, but we'll leave it for another day. And another one is one that I'm working on, and both of them are really about temples, specifically from certain eras and certain geographies. One is one that I'm working on, which we want to get done this year. And another one is being authored by one of the contributors to Padma Bharatis. And that also is in a similar stage of development. And both of these, we plan to see published in 2025.
so 2025, another book. Last Padma Bharatis was last year, right?
Yes, doesn't seem that
You're
long
on
ago.
a roll. I mean, yeah, you're on a roll. One book a year, not a bad record at all. So thank you so much for your time, and really, really grateful. Not just for your time today, but for the fact that you played such a significant part in a book that is bound to leave people inspired. And as you mentioned in the initial part of our conversation, that it is not a book just for India, it is a book for people across the globe, because the profiles that are there are bound to leave any reader inspired with the amount of work that the folks profiled in the book have done, the kind of contribution that they have made to the society. Thank you so much, Jai Bhai. It was wonderful interacting with you, and I look forward to having conversations with you on your upcoming projects whenever they are out in the market. That was a fascinating insight into the making of Padma Bharatis and the vision behind this anthology. Now we turn to some of the contributing authors themselves. I have with me a few of them, and I'll be posing the same question to each so that we can hear their unique perspective on this shared theme. Namaste, Maithili ji. Such a delight to have you here with us today. I would like you to tell the audience about the chapter that you've contributed, who you have profiled, and what you feel is the takeaway for the readers who go through the book.
A very good evening to everybody. Thank you so much for having me here, Dimple ji. And I'm truly grateful to Jay ji and Indica for having given me this opportunity for myself also to learn a lot through this entire journey, as I would call it. In this book, I have been fortunate, very fortunate, in fact, by contributing 2 chapters. One chapter is Singing the Songs of Life. This is about Sukri Bommagowda, and the other one being the mother of Mother Trees by Tulsi Gowda. And for me, this has truly been a great, very humbling experience. What I have come to realize is that through this experience of mine, that formal education is not everything. It's what we learn from the nature around us, the world around us, that sustains more. We have to connect with the universe, both within and without. That's the philosophy of the land and the universe, that me are one and the same. जल में कुंभ कुंभ में जल है भीतर बाहर पानी ठूठा कुंभ जल जल ही समाना यह तथ कहियो है ज्ञानी. And this very profound thought has been exemplified, lived by these 2 great women who were totally unassuming in their nature. They have lived full life at their own terms, doing what they love the most. And whether it was lucrative for them or not, they lived life the way they wanted to live. Ultimately, the material world does not accompany us, is what I have learned from these 2 ladies whom we lost very recently. Within a short span, we lost both of them together. And what stays with us is what we have given to the world. In fact, in the most recent, the most recent edition of the very popular Kannada magazine Sudha, we have a very poignant and beautiful poem penned for Tulsi Gowda ji also. And thank you so much. And it's lovely having connected with all of you and interacted with all of you. Thank you so much.
I would request you to tell our viewers what chapter have you contributed to Padma Bharatis, who have you profiled, and what, in your view, is the reader takeaway from that chapter.
Ms. Ramanujam, I have written the story called A Tongue on Every Stone. This is about the life and legacy of Sri K.K. Muhammad. He's an archaeologist and historian, well known, and of course, a Padma Shri. Popular legacy will always surround Sri K.K. Muhammad ji. He'll be known as the Muslim archaeologist who supported the Ram Janmabhoomi movement. It's a secular lens. It's correct, but it does not do full justice to his work. His stand on Ram Janmabhoomi, it only reflects his deeper commitment to truth. He spoke about his personal experience and learning in the Ayodhya debate. That commitment for truth reflects in his other work too. He searched for the truth, like for the chapel in Fatehpur Sikri and the remains of the patron saint of Georgia in Goa. He has worked to resurrect and preserve the historical truth in Bateshwar. He worked to spread the knowledge of history through doll museums, experience centers, and many other facilities. He's also worked to make museum visits a very pleasurable experience with simple visitor facilities. I get a few messages from him, and they all relate to making archaeology popular. He's prepared a comic book on Bateshwar for children. He talks about how experience centers can make people understand Varanasi even better, and he has many other such bubbling ideas. When the readers go through the story, my wish is that they feel the enormous mental and physical strength Sri K.K. Muhammad has shown in his career to discover, defend, and spread our history. Do read the stories, and I hope you enjoy the book. Namaste and thank you.
The next contributing author that we have is Ms. Munmun Banerjee. Welcome, Munmunji. Which chapter have you contributed to Padma Bharatis? Who have you profiled? And what do you think would be the lasting impression on a reader when they read it?
Namaskar. I have contributed the chapter Ramesh and Shanti Parmar, Gudiya Karigar and Samaj Kalakar Ki Jodi. The main inspiration for me to write this story was to throw light on gender dynamics is prevalent in India. Today we look our own nation through the monochromatic Western perspective and bring concepts like feminism. While there are several unknown small towns in remote corners of India where men and women work together, uplifting each other with their weakness as well as strength, despite of the myriad of challenges. Just like Ramesh and Shanti Parmarji, about whom I have written. Despite of the myriad challenges, they learned a dying craft of doll making, and in their journey, they uplifted an entire community of Bhil tribes who were neglected and even termed as criminals by the Britishers during the colonial era. So today and forever, we have our own examples that how men and women worked together. And we even today can learn from these examples rather than blindly aping the West, and how men and women working together can bring positive change. So this was what I want to say, and this is all the story about. And I'm very thankful to Indica for giving me this opportunity. I hope you'll enjoy the story and the book Padma Bharati. Thank you.
Our next contributing author is Ms. Madhavi Kunteji. Madhaviji, please tell us the chapter that you've contributed to Padma Bharatis, who you have profiled, and the lasting impression your writing would leave on the reader.
Namaskar. I'm Madhavi Kunte, and I had the good fortune of interviewing Padma Shri Rahibai Soma Popure, also known as Speech Mother, for this project. My story features as the very first one in the book, that is the Seed Mother. Rahibai is a stark contrast, coming from a poor family background with no means to excel in life, and yet she became a lone crusader for a cause. She dedicated her life to conservation and cultivation of indigenous varieties of plants, and further committed herself to building a nation's robust health. I would say, from my perspective, it is very difficult to concentrate on the greater good of society if your own life is lacking in so many ways. But Ranibai and her family proved otherwise. When I came across her life story, it fascinated me to this extent that I felt compelled to write about her, and I'm so thankful to Indica for providing me that very platform where I could tell about her. She gave our society food for thought when she did a complete turnaround, and instead of going with the flow and cultivating hybrid crop, she cultivated indigenous varieties, saved them for the future generations in a very small field of hers. Her vast experience on and off the field has transformed her into this resilient persona with a foresight that people uh, may not even achieve after attending the best of schools and universities they go to. She never went to school in a conventional way, and yet today she has become this guiding light for many students and aspiring agriculturists. If you ask me to describe Rahibai Popere in one single sentence, I would compare her to a lush green tree laden with fruits. She is pure, humble, down to earth, and focused on her task at hand. That is consistently giving back to the society in abundance, and that is something worth learning from her. Thank you so much.
Namaste. Our next guest is Srimati Shantani Govindan, contributing author to Padma Bharatis. Shantani ji, tell our audience what is the chapter that you've contributed to? Who have you profiled? And what do you think is the reader takeaway of that? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. So the chapter that I have written is about Subhashini Mistry. It's about the hospital that Subhashini Mistry built. I'm basically a children's book author, and I have written about Subhashini Mistry in very brief, maybe 700 or 800 words for a CBSE school book. But the story was so powerful and it caught my imagination. There was no scope to expand the story in the curriculum that I was writing for, but the story sort of lingered in my mind. And when INDICA put out this call that they were looking for exceptional stories of not so well-known Padma Shri awardees, I thought this was an opportunity to write in detail about Subhashini Mistry. So the reason that her story caught my imagination was because she was a very poor widow in straitened circumstances. It didn't look as if she would ever be able to climb out of the poverty that she found herself in. But she had a dream, and that was to build a hospital for poor people, because she lost her own husband because of non-availability of timely medical care. And even though it looked as if she had unsurmountable challenges, she never gave up on her dream. She fought, took her 27 years to save up enough money by selling vegetables to make enough money to buy a little shack to start her hospital. And her story is truly inspirational. I thought it was exceptional because it shows the power of one. We all wait, we want to do something, but there's nobody to help us. We need people to rally around us, to give us money, to hold our hand. She didn't have any of those things. And yet she built a hospital that is today an exceptional institution. So I thought this was an inspirational story for anyone. Even if you have nobody, if you have no money, you have nothing. If you have a dream and you have enough faith in your own abilities and in your own dream, you can still make it. So I could not speak to Subhashini Mistry myself because she's gravely ill. But I had lots of interactions with her son, who is the chairman of the hospital, which has been built. Even last week, I spoke to him. He was very happy with the book. He showed her the book, and that so many people are going to be inspired by her story. So it was altogether a wonderful experience for me. And I think that they were also happy that more people would learn from their story. And maybe the takeaway would be that more people would try to do things themselves and not wait for the government or for banks or for family or friends to rally around you. If you have a dream and you have enough faith, you can do it all by yourself. So this story was mainly to illustrate the power of one. I'm very grateful to INDICA for having selected this story. And I hope that the readers will be as inspired by Subhashini Mistry's story as I was. Thank you so much.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of INDICA Buzz. We hope this conversation has given you a deeper insight into Padma Bharatis and the inspiration and energy behind it. But this is just the beginning. INDICA Buzz will continue to bring forth conversations that explore Indian knowledge traditions, inquiry, and creativity. bridging the Shastra with Prayoga, the contemplative and the expressive, the past and the present. Through the series, we will engage with more projects, more ideas, and more voices that bring these traditions into meaningful contemporary engagement. Before we wrap up, here's how you can stay connected with us. Engage with us. Share your thoughts on today's conversation, what resonated with you. Suggest topics if there's a project or a theme you would like us to explore. We'd love to hear from you. Stay updated by following Indica on all of its social media, and do visit indica.in to know more about the organization and the kind of work we do. And most certainly explore Padma Bharatis. It is available in both online and physical stores across. Thank you for being part of today's journey, dear audience. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and let the wisdom of India inspire your path. Namaste.